I don't know if anybody has any questions for me. Am I answering all my questions correctly? Oh, you asked me if, for example, I had a baby 6 months ago. I had a humongous stomach not too long ago. In that case, when you don't have a memory care director to oversee, because it's not an individual, it is an individual position, but it's still, everything is a team. We're overlap with everything. We overlap. I have to see, not only am I over their nursing care, but still I watch out for the activities. If I think something should happen, it's not happening, I say to the activity or life enrichment director, listen, this is not working. I basically see everything. The food, if I think, oh, they can't eat this dish, why make it? Why even offer it to them? I see that as well. If we need more hands and to oversee the residents, I go to my executive director and I say, we need more hands because we have all these falls and we have to make sure we keep an eye on these certain residents, and right now we're not accommodating them with the number of staffing. So basically it's, like I said, it's a whole, it involves a lot of things. It's not just me being there, dressing pretty and just giving orders, it's getting involved. And you have to have that, otherwise it's, I tell the family members, if you don't really care about that, if I don't care about my position, it's just an annoyance. Because then throughout the day I may be in the middle of doing a paperwork or on the phone call, somebody's on the floor, I'm gonna respond. I'm gonna go into what's going on, I'm gonna help the nurses, because sometimes, like you all know, it's very challenging to have someone consistently be in memory care. And I applaud my CNAs and nurses because it's challenging to be there that 8-hour shift and you're constantly with the residents, and some of them sometimes will hit, and so it's not for everybody, but the ones who do, I applaud them because they're great at it, and you have to care. That has to be a part of it. If you don't care, it's just an annoyance, and it's not really, you're not enjoying it. But getting back to my answer about not having somebody there, when I was in on maternity leave, I had somebody in my position, basically doing the day-to-day, because there's things you have to do in my position on day-to-day to keep going. Even the paperwork sometimes can wait, but resident care, family, addressing issues, that cannot wait. So somebody has to be, present, call the families. I make a point of calling families, and I may be guilty of not doing all the time. Sometimes things happen where, we're humans, may slip my mind, but I make a very good point of always calling and saying, listen, we're changing medication because of this, or I'm seeing this, I'm gonna have them see the doctor because this and that, and just keeping them in the loop, because especially if they're not here, it's very different to come from overseas or maybe a different state and see mom and dad in 3 years and say, oh my goodness, even though I'm in contact and saying, okay, they're not really walking well, we're getting physical therapy, we're doing this, we're doing that, but to see them, some of the families, if they're not here constantly, they're like, oh my goodness, it is a very big change after a while to be able to basically accept. It's hard to accept. I know I have this issue sometimes because some of the residents, I develop a relationship with them because they move in when they're kind of in transition of the disease. They're not really able to live outside of the memory care, but they can function somewhat, to some extent, better than others. They're at a different level of their dementia. So I build this relationship with them, and I have them on a routine. Okay, now we do this, this, and this. And after a while, to watch them actually not being able to follow these directions and maybe just saying things that doesn't make sense. Even for me, it's hard. So I can imagine what it is for you, the families and caregivers, because then you were the person who's been with them all of their lives, and all of a sudden, not all of a sudden, but gradually to see them just go downhill, it must be very difficult. So I empathize. Also, what I normally see with memory care, everybody gains weight when they come in. They eat everything. After they eat, they're full. I mean, when I don't know about you guys, but after I eat something, I want to take a little nap quickly, because your stomach is breaking down the food. You're comfortable. You're digesting. I call it resting and digesting. So they gain weight. What I normally see is after they gain weight, then they plateau. They're on a flat line. They're maintaining. And after a while, depending on the resident, it doesn't happen necessarily like this for everybody or at the same pace. That's what's challenging, because everybody experiences the disease very differently. So you have to everything has to be customized to their needs. It can't be, oh, generally we do this. Yes, generally we'll watch over everyone, make sure that they all get to dinner, lunch, but it becomes very individualized, okay? Some people will eat by themselves till the very end. Some, after a while, they stop eating, they lose weight, they gain, they plateau, they lose, and then normally, you know, the end is near. Some don't go to that phase. Some they just go to sleep and don't wake up. But it's, like I said, it's very different for everybody. So I can't, your family member may do this. Some people, I don't know if you guys are familiar with the 7-level of dementia that we have. I have this paperwork that I give to families, and I said, why don't you read it and see what applies to your family member? And what I find is, actually some of the residents, they fall in maybe 2 to 3 categories. They may be at a 4, 5, and 6 at the same time, because it's very broad. It's not customized to everybody. But what I go in is I pick out, I underline or highlight what applies to them, and they may be in 3 different stages at the same time of dementia. And honestly, the staging thing it's not the best system that I find, because like I said, there can be in so many different stages at the same time that sometimes it's like, okay, I'll give them, instead of a 7, like they have 7 stages, 1 through 7, I'll say, well, they're not quite a 7, because if they're able to feed themselves and can walk around, then they're not a 7, because 7 is basically you're in a chair, we do everything for you. And most of the residents don't actually go to that stage. They actually kind of are in between, you know, and then things happen. And I think what's underestimated a little bit is the fact that I think a lot of us say that they think people die of dementia. And what I find personally is that they don't die of dementia. It's normally, say for example, they stop eating, you know, and it's dementia is the cause, but not technically the cause. It's a part of it. Because looking at the whole picture, that they stop eating, so their appetite goes down. We try to get them to eat, they won't eat, and then they may be clenching their teeth. And when they do, if they say no, we cannot feed them. I know some of the families and caregivers have a hard time with it and saying, well, I make mom and dad's decisions for them. So if I say they're going to eat, they're going to eat. And I said, no, because they still have free will. And at some point, I can't explain it to you. I don't know how they know, but at some point, some of them they say, we're not gonna do it anymore. And that's the resident's choice. They'll not eat, not because they can't. Some of the, sometimes it's because, you know, the gag reflex is no longer there, that they're coughing a lot when they're eating. So we'll try to give them like maybe soft foods or something to see if we can facilitate their eating, because we wanna make sure they get enough nutrient. Because I always emphasize, like I said, quality of life, okay? Is it a good quality? Are they enjoying their meal? Can they enjoy their meal? Can they enjoy the activities? So, but if they're clenching their teeth and they say, no, they're shaking their head. I have a resident right now, I'm having a challenge with getting her to eat or even drink and Ensure. And we use a lot of Ensures because they won't eat. So what we do is we give the Ensure, and it's a supplement. It kind of covers a meal's worth of calories, basically. And so they'll drink it because it's tasty, it's sweet, it's tasty, they'll drink it. But it maintains their weight a lot of the time, but it won't necessarily make them gain unless they're eating a full meal, then eating it, then drinking the Ensure, then they can possibly gain some weight. But it's normally for just maintenance, if they're drinking. Some will not drink it. So we'll try all the different flavors and see, you know, vanilla, chocolate, everything, just to see what will work for them. So we try basically you have a question for me? No, go ahead. I'm sorry, okay. Yes, go ahead.
Isn't it a natural progression when a person refuses food?
Mm-hmm.
It seems to me you're going against nature by giving them something to eat, because this is their way of going out in a very quiet way. They stop eating. Obviously, they're not hungry.
Right.
So, and there's no quality of life.
Right. Right. Right.
So, what would you do? Why would you do that to feed them when they're not asking? They don't want food. They're really willing themselves. They're on a path.
Right.
Their path is they're leaving.
Right.
So
maybe I said something that was a bit confusing. What I was saying is we don't emphasize feeding them at this point. Some of the family members have a hard time seeing, mom and dad declining and saying, oh, they could be hurting or something because they're not eating, their body's not getting the nutrient. And what I say to them is the body is shutting down, so that is a natural process. And some will say, well, I want them to eat anyways. And what I'll say is, okay, we can attempt to assist them with feeding, but we will not force them. So for example, if Mrs. Smith is opening her mouth, obviously we're going to help her and eat because obviously she wants the nutrition. But if she's clenching her teeth and saying, no, 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 that's it. We're not gonna force it.
So some of the people that you see probably need to see someone to talk to so they can prepare themselves for the end.
Yeah, and that's basically what I do. It could be a bit morbid sometimes to always talk about imminent death, and that's hard because that's your family member. You know it's inevitable that we all will someday have this path, this. But my role is to I take it as a go. If it's not an issue, I will say, now, this is what we can expect. But when it becomes an issue, I really addressed it and say, okay, now, mom is not eating, she's not drinking, she doesn't want it. What is your goals of care, basically? If goals of care is to treat, then we will treat. The doctor will, order tests, and see why, do blood work, lots of different tests. But if the goals of care is care and comfort, comfort is whatever the resident needs are. Yes, I'll be right with, go ahead.